They say we live in the most advanced time in history, a world full of technology, comfort, and endless choices. But despite all this, most of us feel lost, anxious, distracted, like something important is missing, something deep, something we forgot along the way. But what if I told you that 2,000 years ago, a man who ruled an empire, who could have anything, command anyone, and destroy anything, had already figured it all out? What if the wisdom we need to survive, modern life, was hidden in the writings of a Roman emperor? His name was Marcus Aurelius. You may have heard of him, a warrior, a philosopher, a man who led millions, faced plagues, betrayal, war, and yet remained deeply calm, focused, and peaceful within himself. While the world around him burned, he wrote quietly in his journal, reflections not meant for anyone else, just for him, his private thoughts, his truth, a book we now call Meditations. And inside those pages, there's something we desperately need to remember, a forgotten truth so powerful that if you truly understand it, it could shift the way you see your entire life. But we've buried it under noise, lost it in the chaos of our phones, the pressure to be liked, the fear of being left behind. So today, I'm going to take you back, not to worship the past, but to remember what we lost. Not to copy Marcus, but to learn from what he understood about being human, about life, death, time, and what really matters. Because Marcus didn't write about power or money or conquering others. He wrote about conquering yourself. He believed that everything you need to live a strong, peaceful, powerful life is already within you. That no matter how much the world changes, the one thing you can always control is your mind, your thoughts, your reactions, your choices, and yet we've forgotten that. We panic at every problem. We chase every shiny thing. We scroll, compare, complain, and wonder why life feels empty. We let the world decide how we feel, what we want, who we are. But Marcus didn't. In the middle of a collapsing empire, with enemies at every border, with personal tragedy haunting him, he remained still. And every night, he asked himself questions most of us avoid. What if I died tomorrow? What am I clinging to that doesn't matter? What am I doing with the time I have? He knew something we forgot, that life is short, that control is an illusion, that the only true power is self-mastery. He knew that we all have a role in this world, and that our job is not to chase more, it's to become more. You see, the world tells you to hustle harder, be louder, move faster, but Marcus would say, slow down, look within, ask yourself, are you living with intention or just reacting? Are you leading your mind or letting it be led by everything and everyone around you? This isn't just philosophy, this is survival, because if you don't take control of your mind, something else will. Fear, greed, ego, pressure. And once that happens, you lose your power. This video isn't about history. It's not about Rome or emperors or ancient quotes. It's about you, your life, your mind. It's about remembering something simple but life-changing. That peace doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. And Marcus Aurelius, he knew that, he lived that. And today we're going to explore what he left behind, not just as a message, but as a map. A guide for anyone lost in a world full of noise, craving clarity. So take a breath, forget the outside world for a moment. This story is about you, about remembering what really matters. And by the end of this journey, you just might start seeing your life and yourself very differently. Let's begin. He wasn't born into peace. Marcus Aurelius entered a world of conflict, power struggles, and deep uncertainty. He was just a boy when the empire chose him, not for what he had done, but for who he might become. From a young age, he was trained, not just to rule, but to think, to lead not with emotion, but with reason. He was a student of philosophy before he ever sat on a throne, and long before he wore a crown, he wore humility. Marcus never asked to be emperor. In fact, he never wanted it. He would have preferred a quiet life, reading, writing, reflecting. But fate had other plans. When the time came, he didn't run. He accepted his role with discipline, not desire, because he believed something we rarely do, that your duty is more important than your comfort. Imagine this: you're running the most powerful empire in the world, and every day brings new threats. Wars on the borders, corruption in the court, disease in the streets. People around you scheme for power, betray each other, lie, flatter, manipulate, and through all of it, you write, not orders, not speeches, but reflections. Marcus Aurelius would stay up late, writing not for the world, but for himself. Just simple reminders: to stay calm, to act with justice, to resist anger, to embrace pain. It wasn't for show. It wasn't for followers or fame. It was survival. A way to stay human in a world built to turn you into something else. And the pain wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. He lost nearly all of his children before they reached adulthood. Think about that. Burying one child is a pain most people never recover from. Marcus buried several. And still, he showed up every day, not as a broken man, but as a present one. He grieved, but didn't collapse. He mourned, but didn't quit. His suffering didn't make him bitter, it made him better. This wasn't strength from muscles, this was strength from meaning. The kind of strength that comes from deep clarity, a knowledge that everything is temporary, including pain, including pleasure, including life itself. You see, Marcus was surrounded by luxury, palaces, servants, status, everything people chased today he had. And yet, he reminded himself every day, it's all dust, it's all fading. The only thing that matters is how you live, how you think, how you treat people, how you use the time you've been given. He could have chased power. Instead, he chose discipline. He could have drowned in pleasure. Instead, he chose purpose. He could have hardened his heart. Instead, he chose wisdom, but he wasn't perfect. That's what makes him powerful. He had doubts. He made mistakes. He sometimes struggled with anger, with pride, with fear, but he kept coming back to the page, back to himself. He didn't pretend to be a god. He just tried to be a good man. And maybe that's what we've forgotten. That greatness doesn't mean being perfect. It means showing up with integrity again and again, especially when it's hard. That strength isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the ability to remain stable when the world shakes you. Marcus lived through 15 years of war. He watched people he trusted betray him. He saw the empire decay from within, and through all of it he held on to one truth: you can't control what happens, but you can always control how you respond. We live in a time where everyone wants to be heard, but Marcus focused on listening, to reason, to conscience, to nature. He didn't waste time chasing applause. He asked himself, is what I'm doing right? Is it good for the whole, not just for me? Am I living as a human being should? There's one entry in Meditations where he reminds himself, soon you will be dead. All your possessions, your title, your reputation gone. So why waste time on things that don't matter? And maybe that's the real difference between us and him. We wake up and reach for our phones. He woke up and reached for his thoughts. We want validation. He wanted virtue. We seek distraction. He sought clarity. He ruled the world, but worked harder on ruling himself. And in that contrast lies the lesson. Because Marcus didn't just live in another time, he lived with another mindset, one that we need now more than ever. A mindset of calm in chaos, clarity in confusion, wisdom in a world full of noise. He didn't scream, he didn't chase, he didn't collapse under pressure. He stayed still. And that stillness, that unshakable core, that's what gave him power, not the kind that conquers others, but the kind that conquers the self. So who was Marcus Aurelius really? He was a man given the world, who chose to master his mind instead. A man with every reason to give in, who chose to rise. A man who saw clearly what we often refuse to see, that everything outside you is uncertain. But the one thing you always own is your soul. And now, in a time when everyone is overwhelmed, anxious and searching for meaning, his voice echoes louder than ever. Not because he was special, but because he dared to remember something eternal. You don't need to be an emperor to live like one. You just need to remember who you are and what truly matters. At the center of everything Marcus Aurelius believed, beneath all the quotes, the philosophy, the reflection, there was one truth. One idea that shaped how he thought, how he acted, and how he faced the hardest parts of life. You don't control what happens to you, but you always control how you respond. That was the core, the foundation, the truth that carried him through war, death, betrayal, and pressure no ordinary person could imagine. And it wasn't just theory for him, it was how he lived every single day. Think about that. You wake up and something terrible happens. You lose your job. Someone you love walks away. A plan falls apart. Most of us react with panic, anger, blame. We want to change what happened. But Marcus wouldn't. He would pause. He would breathe. And he would ask, is this within my control? Because if it wasn't, he'd let it go. Not emotionally, not easily, but logically. Because he knew that clinging to what you can't control is the fastest way to destroy your peace. This wasn't about being cold, it was about being clear, and that's what makes Stoicism different. It's not about ignoring emotions, it's about mastering them. It's not about pretending things don't hurt. It's about deciding how you let that pain shape you. Marcus faced betrayal from people close to him. He saw his best generals turn on him, saw greed rot the empire from the inside. But you don't see him raging in his journals. You see him reminding himself, the best revenge is to be unlike him who did the injury. That's power, real power, not yelling, not controlling, but staying true to your principles when it's hardest. That's what Stoicism gave him, a shield, not made of armor, but of perspective. And that same perspective is available to us. Today, we lose it over a bad comment, a mean message, a moment of discomfort. But Marcus dealt with death, war, and a collapsing empire, and kept his soul intact. Why? Because he had one goal, to live with virtue. That word, virtue, meant everything to the Stoics. It didn't mean being perfect. It meant living in alignment with nature, with truth, with reason. It meant acting with wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline, no matter what. That was the real test. Not whether life was easy, but whether you stayed strong when it wasn't. He once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Let that sink in. You're not weak because life is hard. You're only weak if you forget that your power lies within you, that you decide your attitude, you decide your reaction, you decide who you become in response to pain. We spend our lives trying to control things we can't, what people think, how they treat us, what happens next. But Marcus taught that freedom begins when you stop needing the world to bend for you and start learning to bend with the world. He didn't try to escape reality. He accepted it fully. If he felt pain, he let it teach him. If he was afraid, he didn't run. He asked what the fear was hiding. If he was tempted, he stepped back and questioned his impulse, because to him, self-mastery wasn't optional. It was survival, and he wasn't alone in this belief. The Stoics all followed this same path. Epictetus, born a slave, said it even more clearly. It's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. In other words, the world is just the world. Your suffering comes from the story you tell about it, Marcus agreed. That's why he wrote so often about perception, about training your mind to see things differently. He believed that everything that happens is raw material, and what you build with it is up to you. Pain? That's an opportunity to grow stronger. Loss? A chance to learn detachment. Failure? A lesson in humility. Even death, the thing most people fear above all, was to Marcus a natural process. He didn't dread it. He accepted it. He reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That sounds dark, but it's not. It's freeing. When you realize you could die at any moment, everything gets sharper, clearer. The noise fades. The fear shrinks because you stop wasting time. You stop lying to yourself. You stop postponing peace. That's the Stoic secret, not to fear death, but to let the fear of it push you to live better. And once you embrace that, once you accept that life is fragile, uncertain, and out of your control, you begin to see the only thing you truly own is your character. That's what Marcus focused on. That's why he didn't drown in grief or explode in rage or fall into selfishness when things got hard, because he had trained for it. Every thought he wrote down was a rep in the gym of the mind. Every night he reminded himself, don't get arrogant, don't chase pleasure, don't fear pain, don't expect fairness, don't waste time. And maybe that's what we need now. Not more motivation, not more quotes, but more inner discipline, more ability to pause before reacting, more strength to resist distraction, more clarity to know what matters and what doesn't. Because life will test you. Just like it tested Marcus, you'll be hurt, betrayed, misunderstood, rejected, lost. And in those moments, the question isn't, why is this happening to me? The question is, who will I become because of it? Marcus knew the answer. He knew that the world can't give you peace. It can't give you strength. It can't give you meaning. All of that, all of it, has to come from within. And when you build it from within, nothing can take it from you. Not people, not failure, not time, not even death. That's the core truth he lived by. The truth we've forgotten, but the one we can return to, starting now, because no matter what you're going through, you always have the power to choose, to respond with strength, to act with wisdom, to rise with courage. And when you live like that, you don't just survive the world, you transcend it. Just like Marcus did. We act like we have time. We plan for the future like it's promised. We put off dreams. We delay conversations. We waste hours on things we know don't matter. All because we secretly believe we're going to live forever. But Marcus Aurelius knew better. He reminded himself every day, not once a year, not once a crisis hits, every single day. You could leave life right now, not to scare himself, but to wake up, to snap out of the illusion we all live in, the illusion of more time. He saw death not as something to fear, but as something that gives life its meaning. It's the pressure that makes each moment priceless, because without an ending, there's no urgency. And without urgency, there's no depth. Think about it. If you were immortal, would anything really matter? Would you care about making peace? With your parents? Would you worry about wasting a year, a month, even a week? Would you push yourself to grow, to build, to face your fears? Of course not. It's the deadline that sharpens the focus, the ticking clock that makes every second count. But most of us run from that reality. We pretend death is far away. We avoid the topic. We distract ourselves with noise, social media, scrolling, gossip, entertainment, anything to avoid the silence that might remind us. Our time is limited. But Marcus, he ran toward it, not out of darkness, out of clarity. He wrote to himself, "Don't behave as if you have 10,000 years to live. Death hangs over you while you live, while it is in your power. Be good." This wasn't some emo mindset. This was power. Because when you realize your days are numbered, you don't waste them. You stop chasing empty things. You stop needing approval. You stop living on autopilot. And you start asking the questions that actually matter. What am I doing with my life? Who am I becoming? Am I living by choice or by habit? You see, time is the most ruthless teacher. It gives the test first and the lesson later. You don't get a do-over. There's no replay button. The moment passes and it's gone. And the worst part, we don't just waste time. We spend it on things that make us weaker: drama, jealousy, fear. We give our energy to arguments that won't matter a week from now. We hold grudges, we compare. We scroll through other people's lives while ignoring our own. But death puts it all in perspective. When you remember you're going to die, really remember, the noise fades. The things you were stressed about yesterday suddenly feel small. The things you took for granted, a deep breath, a kind word, a walk in the sun, become priceless. That's the gift of remembering death. It doesn't take your life away. It gives it back to you. That's why the Stoics meditated on mortality daily. Not to be morbid, but to be present. To live with awareness, not avoidance. Because the truth is, most people don't live. They exist. They float. They repeat. They wake up, go through the motions, fall asleep, and call that living. But life isn't something you can binge later. It's now. It's here. It's this moment. And every second you're not fully in it is a second you've lost forever. Marcus understood this. He didn't let the weight of the crown numb him. He didn't let the stress of war rob him. He reminded himself every morning, this could be my last sunrise. And that thought didn't depress him. It focused him, because when you know you're going to die, you stop acting like you'll always have the chance to say, I love you. You stop assuming there will be more time to start that book, build that dream, forgive that mistake. You stop playing small. Death to Marcus wasn't the enemy. It was the mirror. The mirror that shows you who you are when everything else is stripped away. And time was the fire in which you're forged. Every second is a decision. Will you waste it, or will you shape it into something meaningful? He knew that time doesn't ask for permission. It keeps moving whether you're ready or not. The sun doesn't wait for your motivation. The seasons don't wait for your schedule. Your heart keeps beating, and one day, it won't. That's not fear. That's freedom. Because when you accept death, you stop fearing it. And when you stop fearing it, you start living in a way that honors it. You realize the goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to live fully now, so that when the end comes, you're not full of regret. You're full of peace. And that's something very few people get to feel, because they never stopped long enough to look death in the face and say, you don't scare me anymore, because I've made every day count. Marcus didn't want to die. He didn't chase it, but he wasn't owned by the fear of it. That's what made him unshakable. He accepted that death is part of life, just like night is part of the day. Just like pain is part of growth. You can resist it all you want, but it's coming. So why not live in a way that prepares you for it? Why not live with urgency, with clarity, with heart? That's the Stoic mindset. Not cold, not distant, but awake. Awake to the truth that your time is your most precious currency, and every moment you spend in fear is a moment you've traded for nothing. Every hour you spend on revenge, resentment, regret is an hour you'll never get back. But every second you spend living, fully, honestly, courageously, is a second you've beaten death. Not by avoiding it, but by rising above the fear of it. So now ask yourself, if this was your last week, alive, would you still be doing what you're doing? Would you still complain about the same things? Would you still wait for the right time? Or would you move differently? Speak more clearly? Love more freely? Would you finally live instead of just existing? That's the gift Marcus left us. Not a book of quotes, but a way to see life. Raw, real, urgent. A way to face death, not with fear, but with focus. Because In the end, there's one truth we all share. The clock is ticking. The question is, what are you going to do before it runs out? Most of us live with our hands full, clutching, grabbing, holding on to people, to pain, to the past. We grip so tightly to things we can't control that we forget the weight we're carrying. And slowly, without noticing, that weight starts to define us. It shapes how we feel, how we act, how we see the world. But Marcus Aurelius believed in letting go, not in a careless, cold-hearted way, but in a wise and powerful way. In a way that freed him from the emotional chains most people never even realize they're wearing. He understood something most of us don't. Attachment creates suffering. The more you depend on external things, outcomes, opinions, possessions, status, the more vulnerable you become. Because none of those things are truly yours. Not your success, not your image, not even the people you love. Everything outside of you can change. And eventually, everything will. That's not negativity. That's reality. People grow, plans fail, bodies age, life shifts. And the more you resist that change, the more pain you create for yourself. But when you learn to detach, truly detach, you stop letting the world control your peace. You stop needing things to go your way to be okay. You stop building your identity on things that can disappear. That's what Marcus trained himself to do. In the middle of being an emperor, with all the power, all the wealth, all the temptation, he constantly reminded himself, you are just a soul, carrying a body, passing through time. He would hold objects and imagine losing them. He would picture people close to him, gone. Not because he was cold, but because he knew love without attachment is stronger than love with fear. When you love someone with detachment, you don't try to own them. You don't need them to stay the same. You just appreciate them for who they are while they're here, and when they leave, as all things eventually do, you can grieve with grace instead of collapse in bitterness. Marcus wasn't just writing these ideas for fun. He lived them. He lost multiple children during his life. He buried people he loved, and still, he returned to his journal, reminding himself, what is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. Meaning, what happens to one of us happens to all of us. And detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging, because clinging is a form of fear, and fear poisons everything. We cling to relationships because we're afraid to be alone. We cling to success because we're afraid of being forgotten. We cling to money because we're afraid of lack. But the Stoics taught, the more you cling, the more you suffer, because the tighter your grip, the more it hurts when life rips something away. So how do you practice detachment? You start with your thoughts. You question the story you're telling yourself. You ask, if I lost this, would I still be me? If the answer is no, you've got an attachment. And if you've got an attachment, you've got a vulnerability. Marcus wanted to build his strength from the inside, not the outside. He knew that real freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. And that's the shift. It's not about rejecting the world. It's about not being ruled by it. It's about walking through chaos without being pulled into it. It's about owning things without letting them own you. Because the truth is, you don't actually own anything. You borrow it, your car, your clothes, your body, even your time, all of it borrowed. And detachment is the mindset that lets you live with full appreciation but zero dependence, so you can enjoy deeply. Without being destroyed by loss, you can dream big. Without being broken by failure, you can love fully. Without being crushed by change, because you're not living from a place of need. You're living from a place of presence. And that's the difference. Need is heavy. Presence is light. Most people carry invisible bags, packed with expectations, regret, pressure, pride. And they wonder why they're exhausted. But Marcus carried almost nothing, not because he had less to carry, but because he chose to set things down. He set down his ego. He set down his attachments. He set down his fear of losing. And in that emptiness, he found peace. Because when your hands are empty, you're open. When your heart isn't clenched, it can grow. And when your identity isn't tied to anything external, nothing can shake it. That's detachment. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care better, more clearly, more purely. You show up because you want to, not because you have to. You give without expecting. You act without obsessing. You move forward without dragging the past behind you. And that's where the real power is. In being rooted in who you are, not what you have. Because the moment you attach your worth to things outside of your control, you give your peace away. But the moment you realize that nothing is truly yours, and that's okay, you become untouchable, like Marcus, like a true Stoic, someone who can walk through fire and not burn, someone who can lose everything and still be whole, not because they're empty, but because they're free. You are not your emotions. That's the first truth Marcus Aurelius understood. He felt deeply. He hurt. He struggled. He wasn't made of stone. He was human, like you, like me. But unlike most people, he never let his emotions rule him. Because the moment your emotions control your actions, your life stops being yours. Most people are slaves to how they feel. If they're angry, they lash out. If they're sad, they shut down. If they're afraid, they run. And when the emotion passes, regret takes its place. But the Stoics taught that emotions aren't the enemy. Undisciplined emotions are. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't say suppress how you feel. He said control how you respond. That's discipline. Discipline is not waking up at 5 a.m. Discipline is not grinding yourself into the ground. Discipline is choosing your response. When everything in you wants to react, it's saying no when your emotions scream yes. It's walking away when your pride says fight. It's staying calm in the middle of a storm. Not because you don't feel the wind, but because you've trained your roots to hold. Marcus Aurelius wasn't born disciplined. He trained it, just like a soldier trains for battle. Every day he practiced watching his thoughts, detaching from emotion, asking himself, is this helpful? Is this in my control? Is this worthy of my energy? That's what made him powerful. Because when emotions rise, anger, fear, jealousy, shame, most people drown. But a disciplined mind is like a ship with a strong anchor. It might rock, but it doesn't sink. And this doesn't mean you become cold. In fact, discipline lets you feel more deeply. Because you're no longer afraid of your own feelings. You don't run, you don't numb, you face them, you master them, you feel the anger and breathe through it. You feel the sadness and sit with it. You feel the fear and still move forward. That's courage. That's strength. That's what Stoicism is really about. Not turning off your heart, but training your mind. Marcus faced betrayals, wars, plagues, political chaos. And still, he wrote calmly to himself at night, not because he didn't feel the weight of it all, but because he refused to be crushed by it. He refused to hand his power over to emotion. Can you imagine what your life would look like if you didn't give in every time you were tired, every time you were anxious, every time you were hurt? That's the life Marcus lived. That's the life you can live, but it takes practice. Discipline is a muscle, and emotions are the weight. Every time you choose to pause instead of react, that muscle grows. Every time you respond with reason instead of rage, it grows. Every time you sit in discomfort instead of escaping it, it grows. And slowly, something shifts. You stop being pulled by moods. You stop being a puppet for every trigger. You start becoming solid, grounded, focused. You become the kind of person who moves with intention, not impulse. That's rare, because let's be honest, the world celebrates emotion. Social media rewards outrage. Culture glorifies chaos, and the idea of being calm under pressure, that's become almost mythical. But Marcus knew true freedom is emotional freedom. It's not needing everything to be perfect to feel peace. It's not needing everyone to agree to feel confident. It's not needing every day to go your way, to keep moving forward. That's discipline. And here's the key. Discipline isn't punishment. It's love. It's loving yourself enough to protect your future from your current mood. It's saying, I don't feel like it, but I'll do it anyway. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because you respect yourself, because your mission matters more than your mood. That's what Marcus lived by. And the crazy thing, he didn't do it for applause. He didn't post about it. He wrote for himself in private, just to stay steady in a world full of chaos. That's what makes this powerful, because this kind of discipline, it's not showy, it's silent. It's the daily choices nobody sees. Waking up when it's hard, letting go of resentment when it's easier to hate, staying consistent when no one's watching. That's what forges character. That's what builds strength. And once you start seeing emotions for what they are, messengers, not masters, you unlock something most people never experience. Peace in the middle of pressure. Calm in the middle of noise. Power in the middle of pain. That's Stoicism, not pretending you don't feel, but realizing you don't have to obey every feeling. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop being ruled by your emotions, you actually become more human, more grounded, more loving, more aware. You don't take things personally anymore. You don't carry grudges like poison in your chest. You don't waste time trying to control everything outside of you. You focus on the one thing you can always control, yourself. And that is power. That's why Marcus Aurelius still speaks to us today, not because he was a god, but because he was human, and he mastered what most humans never do, the ability to choose who he wanted to be, no matter what the world threw at him. And now it's your turn. You don't have to react the way you always have. You don't have to let your emotions drive your life. You can pause, breathe, think, and choose. You can build discipline not as a cage, but as a key. The key that unlocks the life you're capable of living. A life not ruled by chaos, but led by clarity. Not fueled by impulse, but guided by wisdom. That's what Marcus would tell you. That's what the Stoics would train you in. That's what's waiting, if you're ready to let go of control and take back your power. When you live only for yourself, your world stays small, but when you live for something greater, a mission, a cause, a community, that's when your life expands. That's when your pain has purpose. Your struggle has meaning. Your actions echo beyond your own life. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. He was an emperor. He could have done anything, taken anything, lived in luxury, drowned in distraction, but he didn't, because he believed in the greater good. Not in some abstract way, but in every decision he made. He asked himself again and again, is this action good for the whole? Not just for his comfort, not just for his gain, but for the people, for the system, for the future. He once wrote, what is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. In other words, if it harms others, it will eventually harm you. That's the Stoic vision of leadership, of life. You are not the center, you are a part, and the stronger the part, the stronger the whole. But in today's world, we're taught the opposite. We're told to focus only on ourselves, chase success, chase attention, chase money, and forget the rest. But what if that's why so many people feel empty? What if meaning doesn't come from more, but from giving, from contributing, from rising above the question, what do I get? And asking, what do I give? That's what Marcus lived for. He didn't write his journal to impress anyone. He didn't fight off wars and betrayal for glory. He did it because he believed his role, his duty, was to serve something beyond himself. And that's where real purpose lives. Not in applause, not in status, but in service. When you start living for something greater, everything shifts. You stop obsessing over small problems. You stop reacting to petty drama. You start asking bigger questions. What impact am I making? What legacy am I building? What energy am I bringing into the world? Because here's the truth. Every choice you make either adds to the good or takes away from it. Every conversation, every reaction, every moment of anger or patience or kindness, it all ripples out. You might think your life is isolated. It's not. You affect people, whether you mean to or not. Your words matter. Your energy matters. Your presence matters. That's why Stoics trained themselves to act with intention, to speak with care, to choose the harder right over the easier wrong, because they believed life isn't about being impressive. It's about being useful. It's about asking, what does the world need from me right now? Not just what do I want? Marcus lived through wars, plagues, betrayals, grief, and still he got up every day and tried to be a good man, not for credit, not for applause, but because that's what the world needed. That's what leadership is. That's what strength is, and that's what most people are missing. You're not here to just survive. You're not here to just scroll, to chase likes, to avoid pain. You're here to build, to lift others, to create something better, starting with yourself. That's the greater good. And ironically, the more you give, the more you grow, the more you serve, the more meaningful your life becomes, because fulfillment doesn't come from comfort. It comes from contribution. You could have all the money, all the followers, all the success, but if none of it helps anyone, it won't satisfy you. It'll feel hollow, because we're wired for connection. We're wired to matter, and the way you matter is by doing good, by living with character, by making choices that uplift, not destroy, by being the kind of person others can depend on, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. That's who Marcus tried to be, and you don't have to be an emperor to do the same. You just have to ask, who am I serving today? Not in a grand, dramatic way, but in the small moments. Did I listen or just talk? Did I help or just complain? Did I show up with patience or let my mood lead? That's where it starts, because the greater good isn't just about some big, noble cause. It's about the little ways you live with honor when no one's watching, the way you raise your kids, the way you treat strangers, the way you show up when things go wrong. And the more you live from that place, the stronger you become, not louder, not richer, stronger, because you know your life is part of something larger, and that gives you power, that gives you peace. You stop needing constant approval because your conscience is clear. You stop chasing pleasure because you've found purpose. And you stop asking, what's in it for me? And start asking, what can I offer? That's Stoicism. That's leadership. That's the path to a life you'll be proud of. Not just at the end, but every day you live it. We live in the most connected time in history, but we've never been more lost. We chase knowledge, but forget wisdom. We scroll endlessly, consume constantly, but never pause to ask, what really matters? Marcus Aurelius lived almost 2,000 years ago. No internet, no social media, no distractions like we have today, and yet somehow he understood life better than most of us do now. Why? Because he paid attention to things we've forgotten. He looked inward, not outward. He questioned his thoughts instead of obeying them. He studied death, not to be afraid, but to remember how precious time is. He didn't waste his life trying to impress strangers. He didn't seek comfort over growth. He didn't run from pain. He leaned into it, learned from it, and came out stronger. That's the wisdom we've lost. The wisdom that says you don't need more, you need less. Less noise, less distraction, less ego, more stillness, more truth, more purpose. In today's world, we're taught to look everywhere except inside. We think the answers are in a new book, a new routine, a new hack. But Marcus knew the answers were always within. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." When was the last time you retreated into your own soul? When was the last time you sat in silence and just listened? Not to a podcast, not to your phone, but to your own thoughts, your fears, your truths. That's where wisdom begins, but most of us are afraid to go there. We keep ourselves busy, distracted, so we don't have to face the fact that maybe we've been running in the wrong direction. Maybe we've been climbing a ladder. That's leaning on the wrong wall. Marcus didn't run, he reflected. He faced himself, he questioned everything. That's why his words still hit so hard centuries later, because truth doesn't expire. And here's one of the deepest truths the Stoics knew: you will die. Not someday in the distant future, but soon. Life is short, brutally short. And that's not depressing, that's clarifying. Because once you face death honestly, you finally start to live honestly. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop chasing approval from people who don't care. You stop trading your peace for popularity, your soul for status, and you remember you are here, right now. This moment is real. This moment is yours. That's wisdom. It's not about sounding smart. It's about living well. It's about being able to look in the mirror and say, I was kind today. I did the right thing, even when it was hard. I stayed calm when it would have been easier to lose control. That's power. Not the kind of power you can buy. The kind of power you earn by mastering yourself. And yet this ancient way of thinking, this clarity, this strength, it's become rare. Why? Because our culture has forgotten how to be still, how to be present, how to be disciplined, thoughtful, and focused. We reward speed instead of wisdom, loud instead of true, flash instead of depth. But deep down, we know better. We feel it when we read words from a man who lived 2,000 years ago, and it hits harder than anything on our feeds today. We feel it when we slow down, even for a second, and realize how much we've been missing. The Stoics weren't superhuman. They just refused to live on autopilot. They didn't try to control everything, only themselves. They didn't chase happiness. They built character. They didn't fear death. They feared wasting life. And maybe it's time we remember what they never forgot, because you don't need more time. You need more presence. You don't need more opinions. You need more stillness. You don't need more things. You need more truth, and that truth lives inside you if you're willing to listen. So pause, step back, breathe, and ask yourself, what have I forgotten? Have I forgotten how short life is? Have I forgotten what matters? Have I forgotten that I don't need to prove myself to the world? I just need to show up with integrity. That's the call of Stoicism, not to escape life, but to fully live. And not to feel less, but to be ruled by less. Not to control others, but to master yourself. That's the wisdom we've lost, and that's the wisdom you can remember. Right now, right here, not later. Not when you have time. Now, because your life is happening now, and the only thing that can bring you peace, real peace, is choosing to live it with purpose, with clarity, and with courage. Just like Marcus did. Just like you can. So, what? Now you've heard the thoughts of a man who ruled the Roman Empire, but who chose to rule himself first. You've seen how Marcus Aurelius lived, how he thought, how he faced pain, pressure, power, and never lost his soul. But this wasn't just about him. This was always about you. Because the truth is, you don't need to be an emperor to live with wisdom. You don't need to wear a crown to hold yourself to a higher standard. And you don't need a title to become someone unshakable. The Stoics believed the greatest victory is over the self, over your impulses, your fear, your ego, your excuses, because once you master those things, the world can't touch you, not because you're cold, but because you're clear, not because you don't feel, but because you're not ruled by what you feel. That's the power Marcus carried, and that power is in you too. But you have to choose it. You have to practice it every day, because life won't wait. It won't stop spinning just because you're confused. It won't pause just because you're tired. It's happening right now, and you don't get to run it back. You don't get to redo this week, this month, this year. You only get now. So, ask yourself, are you showing up the way you were meant to? Are you living by default or by design? Are you chasing comfort or building character? You already know the answer, and if something inside you feels uncomfortable right now, good. That means you're awake. That means you're listening. That means there's still time to change, to return to what matters, to simplify your mind, your life, your choices, to stop numbing and start noticing, to stop waiting and start walking, to stop surviving and start living, because in the end, it's not about having a perfect life. It's about having a life that means something. A life where your actions match your values. Where your words are true. Where your time isn't wasted chasing what doesn't matter. A life where you can say, I lived fully. I gave everything. I stood for something. That's a life Marcus would have respected, and it's one you're capable of living. But it starts today. Not with some dramatic transformation, but with small choices. One honest conversation, one hard decision made with courage, one moment of stillness when you could have escaped, one act of discipline when no one's watching. That's how you build a stoic life, brick by brick, choice by choice, moment by moment, and one day without realizing it. You look in the mirror and see someone strong, not perfect, but grounded, clear, alive. That's who Marcus tried to be, and that's who you can be if you remember the truths we've forgotten, that life is short, that time is priceless, that death is near, that peace doesn't come from outside, it comes from within, and most of all, that you are not here to waste this gift. You are here to become something great, not for applause, not for ego, but because it's who you were made to be. So, be it starting now.